Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice podcast, your inside connection to outdoor legislation. From the Beltway to policy happening your way, we're covering it all. I'm your host, Fred Bird. Join us as we explore public land access, wildlife and fisheries management, Second Amendment rights, the triumphs that shape our nation, the sports we all love, and the stories that fuel our passion for the great outdoors. This is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another feature edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. All right, fun one here, getting you ready for Thanksgiving. I advise you, if you have not had a good meal or a snack before this, go ahead, hit pause, go to the kitchen, go wherever you're at, grab something to eat, because you will be starving if you haven't. After this show, your mouth will be watering. Uh, Fun one here, guys. We're gonna talk about the bird. We're gonna talk about all the birds. Talk about wild game, foraging, and from two really great and just incredibly talented, renowned chefs from our space and beyond. Jesse Griffiths joins us. Chef Josh Schwenke. Yeah, let's just get to it. Fun show. Let's tee up Jesse and Josh. Let's go. All right, our special edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast continues. I'm pleased to welcome in Jesse Griffiths of Wild Books. You've heard him on Meat Eater, his contributions there, renowned chef. Two books, The Hog Book, A Chef's Guide to Hunting, Preparing, and Cooking Wild Pigs in this past spring. The Turkey Book, A Chef's Journal of Hunting and Cooking America's Bird. And that's what Jesse's here to talk about, continuing on uh, leading up to the Thanksgiving holiday. We're going to talk about the bird and so much more. Jesse, it's great to have you in. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to finally connect with you, Fred.
Fan of what you do, and it was enjoyable watching your trips. Be the season before the Turkey Book came out with our uh, friend Ben O'Brien, and we actually talked about the book. Ben was on earlier this year, one of our feature programs, and got to cut it up a bit. How was I guess let's start there. I mean, we're going to talk about cooking the bird and getting in all that, but I really want to hear. I mean, the book chronicles that trip that spring, and there's a lot of great pictures. Quickly about the book, so if anyone wants to go buy it, we'll do this again at the end. It's 368 pages of pictures of recipes, over 100 recipes. Jesse's gonna teach you step-by-step instruction of plucking, skinning, and butchering the bird. Uh, how was the spring? I mean, obviously pretty successful.
Yeah, so we kind of settled on journaling an entire spring of hunts. I had only hunted turkeys in Texas at that point, and so wanted to bring Ben on because he's a much more astute turkey hunter than I, and very experienced all over the country with turkeys, and so he was kind of my spirit guide through that, and we decided to set up, 4 different hunts, and originally, we thought, 4 hunts, 4 different subspecies, maybe like some sort of slam, but then I kinda wanted to get away from that a little bit and make it just more geographic or regional, and so we chose Texas, of course, because that's real easy for me, just my backyard. We went to southeastern Georgia, we went to Oregon, the far eastern part of Oregon, kind of a maybe a little bit of an unexplored place as far as turkeys go. And then we went to Connecticut, which is like the kind of the epicenter of turkey lore. We were 20 miles from Plymouth Rock, where, we think, for at least a day a year, we think about turkeys in context of that area. But four very different situations. And of course, just as any turkey hunt will go, it developed into all these, different little adventures, misadventures. We had some success, a lot of failures. Sometimes the birds were just being difficult. Sometimes I was just doing dumb things. We dealt with poachers. We were on public land. We had some, easy stuff happen, and as snow, mosquitoes, name it. It was pretty fun. And so for the concept of the book became more of this journal of a springtime hunt all over, and not only exploring the different regions that these turkeys lived in, but also the people that were there, some of their food traditions, some of their hunting traditions. We're hunting in the mountains with people versus, hunting with a very, acclaimed, Georgia turkey hunter, and so you get these really different perspectives, which was fascinating to me, and, I feel like, it sounds trite to say it, but, we all learned a lot, and, having been along for all of those was really great. He's one of my favorite people, and, just having him, helping me, he did a lot of calling, just learned a lot about those different regions, and as we did that, we were cooking. So we're documenting recipes, we're eating turkey as we're turkey hunting, and then we're also having the people that we're turkey hunting with, they're cooking and contributing recipes as well. So it was really fun. It was, more so than the hog book, it was more of this kind of group effort. Um, um, I mean, as far as, like, different, topics go, like, not only the
Sure.
hunting, but also, like, the butchery too, cooking, we saw different methods of that. Some people like to pluck, some people skin, it can get a little contentious, and, but at the end of the day, I think it produced a really fun book, or I mean, I had a good time doing it. I always say dress for the job you want, and I just wanted to go turkey hunting for work, and so they're, "Well, I'll write a book about it." And nobody's, figured out that I'm just kinda skating through life with that attitude right now, so
That's brilliant. No, I think we all strive to find that wrinkle in our lives, and good for you for doing it. And um, it's really interesting talking about the book, the ability to have this collection contributions from the people you're hunting with. So it wasn't just you and Ben; it was your guides and capturing what was going on there. Um, Through that, what did you discover? As far as butchering the bird, and again, as we march to Thanksgiving, traditionally everyone goes to a farm, gets a already plucked bird, it's already ready to go, as my wife likes to say after I bring a turkey home and do what I do to it, and I bring it upstairs, she's like, "Oh, now it looks like a turkey," right? So, everyone will have their probably a whole bird, whether they bake it, roast it, deep fry it in peanut oil, but through your adventures there that spring, what did you settle on? Or is it that easy?
it's not, it's like, well, I mean, mostly, what I've experienced with turkeys is just like my job is to present, recipes and techniques in a way that people are gonna have the most success with, and so either that's gonna be through context, something really simple and familiar that they're not gonna look at a recipe and like, "Whoa, that's like there's too many ingredients in there that I would have to, drive 50 miles to get," or something that they feel really comfortable with, that they've heard of. And also, just very approachable recipes. Um, and I want them to have success. Roasting a whole wild turkey can be done, don't get me wrong, but can it be done with a lot of consistency? Probably not. Like you might get lucky with a Jake, or you might just, the stars might align for you. So I really tried to stray away from, whole preparations as much as possible, and put, like, dividing everything up, very similar to the hog book where I created 4 categories of hog sizes, and that number 4 worked really well, and so kinda created 4 chapters in the turkey book to kind of help people along with, here's breast recipes, here's leg recipes, here's all the other parts, the wings, the necks, heart, liver, gizzards, skin, and carcasses, things like that, a whole chapter dedicated to that. But then to your point, there is this very celebratory tone around consuming turkey. And I get it, it's fun. And also, and it's such a magnificent bird that you are drawn to present that to family and friends. You want to do that. You want to create a kind of a magnificent centerpiece around those birds. Um, so I really struggled with that recipe wise. Like, how do I go about conveying that it's pretty difficult to roast it whole? Like, I mean, you can't. The line from butterball to wild turkey is a long one. There's like
Right.
a real spectrum there, and achieving success, where it's like people are actually gonna sit down and be like, this leg meat is so nice and tender. And the breast is also incredible. Like, how are you gonna achieve that? So I really struggled with that, what that fourth chapter was gonna be, or whether we're gonna include recipes to cook them whole. And what I settled on was just a chapter dedicated to what I call celebrations, which is, larger format, type recipes. It might not be the whole bird, or it might be a bird that's been pieced out a little bit, like the breasts are cooked one way and the legs are cooked another way, or, we do like a hunter's, Sunday gravy style thing where it's like a very traditional, like, uh, Jersey Italian American approach where it's like a red sauce, and it's usually done with all these different cuts of pork and veal, meatballs and sausages, but instead we're just staging all these different pieces of turkey in there. And so what it still enables you to do is take that whole animal, presented in this kind of grandiose way and have a celebration, and but without trying to achieve that classic Thanksgiving bird, but you can still celebrate it in other ways and just make those recipes simple and kind of foolproof too.
I have found over many years of chasing wild turkey and doing that, presenting them and sharing them as most of us like to do with anything we bring from the field, um, is the diversity of the bird and what you're able to do with it. But especially around Thanksgiving, we have fall seasons where I live in New Hampshire. I think 32 states have fall seasons. So we have that ability to go about traditionally hunting turkeys, which started in the fall, and having something fresh. So most of my family does not hunt, and they never really had that experience of having wild fare, especially at Thanksgiving table. Maybe some locally sourced seafood or something like that, if that was the case, where I'm at here on the seacoast. Nevertheless, I started bringing turkey and venison into that, and then a handful of years ago, I got turned on to spatchcocking. And fall birds being what it is, and then the different way you hunt turkeys in the fall versus the spring, there's also the ability to take smaller birds. You mentioned jakes and, this year's brood stock. If there's some, good 10 pounders out there, they do really well on a smoker. And so anyway, my son would get one, or I'd grab an extra one and spatchcock and do a long good brine on 'em, find a good brine recipe, and man, those things will eat. Um, and the family members, like, almost prefer it to the standard, butterball, like you said. We still have it, but the ability to compare and contrast and have it as a compliment too. And I find people, I treat it like kinda charcuterie. I'll cut it up myself and put it out there and let folks, sample it, and they're like, "This is really, really good." I wonder if some of that has to do with the brine, but and the novelty of it literally coming out of the backyard, but
Mhm.
they like it.
Yeah, brines are really helpful for stuff like that, and having that fall season too, we definitely have one here in Texas, but it's like, they're just, kind of a byproduct, it'd be like they walk out at the wrong time and somebody's gonna shoot them with 270. There is now none of that tradition of fall turkey hunting here where I think that, there's methods. I mean, people hunt them with are used to hunt them with dogs, or there's the flushing and then the regathering of the flock and, really cool, like, old methods, built around that are more temporal and seasonal, when it comes to the Thanksgiving preparations, but and that's another thing that I love, and one of the reasons why I wanted to incorporate so many other people and perspectives into the book is because you will hear that story, you will hear that, like, "Oh, I do this," and it comes out really well, and it's the worst thing that someone that the turkey hunter or a cook could ever do is think that you've learned it all, and it's just, like, it's so important to, like, really stay, like, open-minded about any kind of methodology out there, and you can just learn perpetually from that, and I think that I mean, to your point again, is that, that's why I incorporated so many other people into this book, from Louisiana, Oregon, Idaho, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Georgia, Arkansas. There was people from all over contributing to this, and not only the way that they hunted, which was typically varied, but also the way that they cook. And it was really fun. We had a lot of really good food conversations in the making of that book, just based on even as far as like what is gravy, you know? Like, gravy can mean anything, depending on
Controversial,
where
man.
yeah, yeah, I mean, like I was just saying, gravy in New Jersey is tomato sauce. Gravy in Louisiana and Arkansas is brown. Gravy in Texas is white, it's like a cream gravy, and as it is in Oregon, and so it's just like, yeah, I that's what I love, and I think that there's something about turkey hunting, or maybe it's how widespread that animal is, that kind of starts to incorporate this myriad other factors into it. You know, there's culture and food and tradition and history into it, and then and it's like a infinite well of learning.
It's certainly when you go to break one of those birds down, it can be pretty intimidating for the beginner, novice, and hell, even someone that's been at it for a while, they so often and I know that someone like you and me, we often, like, grimace about it. You'll hear people just breasting out the bird and calling it good because it's easy, accessible, they can get at it, because it is work, but, um the effort and the time and the patience put into utilizing all that burden and how you've broken it down, it's really rewarding and it provides again, coming back to the Thanksgiving table, those different options and different taste profiles and we think about that, maybe not anyone, they just come by with a fork and grab it, but they will notice it. And there's a whole lot of value in being able to do that and you spell it all out.
Yeah, I was doing a little talk about this book, you know, about turkeys, and somebody asked me, is they said, "What's the biggest mistake you can make in processing game?" And I think this question might have been specific to turkeys, but I would apply it to anything. And I thought about it for a second, and I was about to give him a very technical reply, and then I was like, I know actually what the biggest mistake you can make in processing any game, and that is that you're not enjoying it and you're not having fun while you're doing it because the mindset is that what you're doing is a chore and this is the non-fun part, like sitting under the tree while your feet are falling asleep,
Yeah.
you know, and hearing the gobble, you know, that obviously that is a very invigorating part of it. But I would say that I very much enjoy the breaking down of a bird. And so I'm compelled by that to take way more than the breast. It's like, what else do I have to do? I just shot a turkey. I can take 45 minutes to do this really well and get the most out of it. And I think that that's probably the stopping point, kind of that bottleneck for most people. And like, well, I'm not going to take the legs to take too much time. My point would be, how long did you sit under that tree? I mean, you know, just like we're talking, take those legs off, it'd be a fraction of the time of it even of the drive out there, you know, things like that. So I think there's a real mostly like mindset changes as far as what you're going to utilize off of a bird, which will then in turn give you so much variety in how you can eat it. And, you know, you've got the legs. Or my favorite parts are probably well, maybe not my favorite. I love fried turkey breast. I mean, let's be honest. But I love the heart, liver, gizzard a lot. And there's a lot of things you can do with that. Turkey livers are objectively great, really mild. Like one of my favorite livers of any game animal. And, just taking the time to get those out and care for them and utilize them later on is really important. But, you know, like I said, you know, we spend so much time in the pursuit of them, and I always think that, like, you know, walking up to the bird or any animal on the ground, you kind of like if you mapped it like it was a dramatic play, you know, that is the climax, that is that part, but you still have so many acts left after that, and that's until the final package is taken out of the freezer. And, I think the key in that is enjoying every single part, you know, and it might be, you know, in February, you might be, you know, perusing the internet to buy some new boots, you know, kind of fun, you know, like I'm gonna get myself some new boots. Are you gonna buy some, you know, some new ammo, stuff like that. I mean, that's on the very front end on that. That's when the credits are just first starting to roll, and then it's gonna coast all the way until, you know, maybe it's Thanksgiving and you pop out this breast and you butterfly it out and you stuff it with pine nuts and raisins and sage and breadcrumbs and roll it up and tie it and cook that for Thanksgiving, you know, something a little bit different. And I think there's so much very just compelling things that you can do with these birds.
You hit on something there I had never considered it before, and I like the way you put it as far as enjoying it. It I think it's a cultural thing within our sporting community, whether it's a turkey, a deer, a bear, whatever. And I think back to all the outdoor television I've consumed over the decades and now more so social media. And the one constant default programming that you seem to have is every post harvest, every post-kill picture or video, inevitably the catchphrase, "And now the work starts," in a
Right.
very negative tone, and as you said it, I'm like, "Yeah, this is the cultural conditioning we've done to ourselves," where it should be like, okay, I did this. That was the climax. Now we get to, like you said, do all that. And what an interesting way to approach that and trying to change mindsets around that. It shouldn't be work. I mean, it's challenging. And if you don't do it a lot, it can be intimidating, but it should be met with joy.
Absolutely. And it's something that I've seen over the years. I teach a lot of butchery classes. I will teach 3 butchery classes this week. Um, and so I interact with people an awful lot. And there's been nothing more valuable than that, than hearing questions, kind of getting attitudes from people. And it advises me more about how to approach the educational part of it. Um, if you get 1,000 questions about feral hogs, then one day you're like, "Oh, I should write a book about that." Because basically the whole thing's been written because all I need to do is compile 1,000 answers into that book, and then it's kind of been done. But then you also start to pick up over time, there's kind of this nuanced attitudes. There are these things that you keep hear people say, exactly what you just said. Now the work begins, and it's like, well, you make yourself a coffee, put on your podcast, and, go out on the porch on a nice cool morning and start to break down that deer. And it's like, that doesn't feel like work to me. I think that's great. It's super fun if you're organized, if I mean, for me, I'm more relaxed if I'm organized. It's like however you need to get there. Maybe it's a glass of whiskey. I don't know, but it's just like do what you need to do to make that process really great. And that's one thing that I've always taught in classes is packaging, things like that, and, like, thinking ahead. People say, "Oh, well, can you throw the whole hindquarter in the freezer?" And be like, "I would not advise that." I would advise doing all the work now so that, next August when you're rooting around in the freezer, you're gonna pull out a package and it's ready to go. Tuesday night, kids are hungry, and it's just like you're gonna thank yourself in the future, and then that's gonna kinda just reinforce all this positivity that you put in there, planning, organization, enjoyment, and then it's just like anything else, you're cutting down on your work or your perceived work. I would argue that, hiking up and down mountains, chasing these dim-witted birds that seem to be so much smarter than me, I would call that work, you know? But I just tend to enjoy the entire process, including the cooking, or especially, I mean, for me, and I think that, a lot of people might feel uncomfortable about cooking or think it's outside their skill set. And that's why it's, again, so important to present recipes and techniques and stuff that are either very approachable or things that they've heard of before. It's like, "Oh, I like enchiladas." Well, cool. Turkeys make excellent enchiladas. Here's 4 recipes for them, and if you can master the simple technique around, dipping a tortilla in a little bit of fat and frying it till it's pliable, then here's 4 ancillary recipes that come downstream from that, that you can then do, and then I'll do that with pasta, and then we'll just do that with a technique, and then we'll add recipes in there because what I've noticed is that people, that once they can build that skill, then they can start to experiment and deviate from that too, and it's all about, like, empowering and inspiring, people to kinda just get outside their comfort zones and achieve that, and then their enjoyment will be increased, and then they won't view it as work.
I should have had lunch before I got on this.
Yeah.
Uh, Keeping in this same line of thought about work versus enjoyment, I can't help but think, and I know some people feel one way or another about, R3 and recruitment. Here on this program and here at CSF, we are all about recruitment because we see the numbers. We see those license sales going down. We see participation going down. So much of the way our conservation system is funded off of Pittman Robinson dollars and Dingle Johnson dollars, especially the Pittman Robinson dollars, are put on the backs right now of the recreational shooting community, right? So all this to get to, when we think about recruiting new hunters and you have that negative outlook on the backside, the downside of the hunt, if we're not doing and presenting that in a joyful way or in a, "Hey, this is the continuation of that," I mean, how many people are you gonna run off? Like a turkey or a duck, I think people can wrap their heads around first timers, especially, emergent hunters, onset hunters, whatever you wanna call them, that are adults, right? But when you start talking about anything like a hog, a deer, and it's like, man, you got 120, 140 pounds of animal you gotta process, and if you're not presenting that in a positive light, you could turn people away pretty quickly. Never mind all the other barriers to entry that we talk about financially, licensing, training, and equipment. You get to the end of it, it's like, "Oh, I gotta do something with this now? Oof."
Exactly. And I think I was gonna use that phrase barriers to entry because there's multiple, you know? And we're in Texas too, and so finding a place is the first one here. I've been fortunate enough to well, I came to hunting later in life. I fished since I was, 4, and it was just something that I loved, and then my very late 20s started hunting. But it was after I'd learned butchery. I had been working in restaurants and learned to butcher, before I'd shot my first deer, and so that was kind of this backwards way of doing it, but the the perspective that I have, the empathy that I'm a bit able to have with new hunters and people that are trying to learn that, it's fresher, I guess, 'cause it didn't happen when I was 8, and I really do think and it's another good point, is just, like, training people to to enjoy and just to have the basic, principles and strategies down about what you do after you get an animal, is extremely helpful because it can be quite daunting. And it's still, I mean, sometimes if you get something down, and you gotta pack it out, I mean, there's all kinds of things that can pop up in situations that are gonna make it difficult. And how do you convince someone to have the confidence, that they can do it? They're gonna make mistakes. You know, I always say, the worst mistake you make is sausage. Sausage is good, like um but, I've been so fortunate to have, 14 years of, interactions with new hunters through the new school of traditional cookery, and, I'd say at least half of our clients/students were brand new to hunting, and I'm a firm believer in recruitment. I've seen it, and, I have, so much time with that I also see, sometimes people, fear, you know, having more too many people on public land and too many hunters and all the other stuff that might come from aggressive recruitment. But I also see a lot of people, hunt one time, and, that might be seen as a negative, but I also view that as a positive because if they hunt one time, that changes their perspectives on a lot of things. It changes their perspectives on gun ownership. It changes their perspectives on hunting, on wildlife management, on resource management, and, resources as far as where their food comes from. I mean, you can achieve all of that in a couple days with somebody, and they might not ever come back and hunt, or they might hunt once a year or every other year or things like that. So, I don't think that the retainment rate is as high, but I think that you get those people really engaged and interested in it, and they stay. They're like, "Oh, I remember when I did that. That was really cool. I wanna do that again." Now, I always thought that hunting was fill in the blank, but I learned that it wasn't, and that venison was so good, that turkey was so good, I wanna do that again, and I think that's a really good way, to talk to people, and we've seen that, time and time again. So, absolutely, I'm into it. I think that it's for everyone, and that everyone, if you're participating in this society and these your public lands and public animals and stuff, then it's your right to give it a shot, and there shouldn't be anything holding you back as long as you're doing it right and responsibly and participating. Like you said, they're funding everything, so it can be a great system. I think, I try to stay real positive about it.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I find it ironic, and I learned this through Ben that, Texas has, like, no opportunities unless you own land, which is crazy. The biggest state in the lower 48, and there's nowhere to hunt. That's nuts.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I had a very, fun conversation one day with one of my guides. He's got a wildlife biology degree. We're really good friends, and he was really getting kind of fired up and negative about the situation in Texas, and I was like, "Check it out. First off, nothing's changing, you know? Like, all these private landowners aren't about to give their land up to become public. So how do we work within this system to make it the best it can possibly be?" And there's so many cool things happening in Texas as far as, granting access to private lands, which is kind of this, like, best of both worlds. You get a very dedicated, and bought-in steward, the person who owns the land, and then if you can develop these programs like Texas Wildlife Association has, they have a really great, robust adult learn-to-hunt program, which gains people access onto these lands, and then they get to experience that land. They get to take care of invasives like hog and aoudad or help cull, whitetail herds, which are really robust here. Um, and so there are some ways that we can deal with that, instead of just, oh, Texas is this, it's like there is some really interesting and exciting ways to kind of work within what we've got here. But absolutely right. I think it's 97% of the state is privately owned. And then that 3% is not open to hunting entirely. It's going to be a fraction of that remainder is available for hunting. And, in the context of turkeys, I think I tried to count one day, but it might be between 50 and 100 turkey tags or available turkeys, uh, per year on public land. Like, that's it. You have to draw, there's probably maybe 10 to 15, I would say, draw hunt opportunities in Texas for turkeys. There's a couple public lands that you can walk in on and just hunt turkeys, but I want maybe 2. And so it's extremely limited. And you're allowed typically 1 gobbler on each of those. And they'll, if you do the math, it's just like, for having, 500,000, 500,000 birds here, I think. Maybe I've got that number way wrong, but a lot of turkeys in Texas. And, maybe 100 of those are available via public draw system, and the rest of them are going to be on private land. So yeah, it's wild. But, then you have lots and lots of guides, and then you just have this kind of system of how do you get on that land, and I've talked to people so much, they come to a class, they live in the city, live in Austin here like I do, and they're like, okay, this was a really fun weekend, but what's my next step? And I'm like, yeah, good question. Your next step is to go to the farmer's market, and you're gonna make friends for a year with a farmer. And then after a year, you're gonna ask if you can come out and help control hogs, or maybe they got turkeys, or maybe they got a back pasture and they see some deer. Or you're gonna make a friend with somebody. You kinda back channel everything like that. It's not impossible, by any means. You can do it. But that's kind of what it takes here. And it's so um, having these conversations with Western hunters, and it seems like we're just on 2 planets, and but I'm fascinated by it, and I really like to talk about the situation that we do have here in Texas versus what a vast public land system is like in Montana or something like that, and how drastically different it is, or how weird it is to me, like when somebody like parks on the side of the road and hops out, and I'm like, "Whoa, uh, somebody gonna shoot you." And they're like, "No, no, we can go here. All everything from here to that mountain over there is public." And I'm just like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, but it's very interesting to me, all of that's fascinating.
I've often, uh, allowed that experience, not on purpose, but it blows people's mind when I would host them up here in New Hampshire. I don't know how Connecticut is. I'm guessing Western Connecticut was probably similar to that, but here in the top 3 New England, it's that colonial land sharing tradition. If it's not posted, you can play on it, and I've hosted people from down south, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, there's a gobbler there. We're gonna go in here." And they're like, "Wait, wait, 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 what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, no, we're good." Most of the places I had permission anyway, know the landowner, but yeah, it freaks people out. You just start walking on some land.
Yeah. Yeah, Connecticut was definitely, a new, region for me in so many ways to hunt, just just the culture, and it was just such an old place, it's just like I mean, obviously, indigenous people have been here for arguably 20,000, maybe double that years, but, like, you would see these cemeteries, British settlers that were, 200 and 300 years old, and all the little rock walls everywhere,
Yeah,
and
I
it was
knew it.
just a very compact
Yeah,
area. It had a feeling that it had been settled for a long time, and we would hunt, and we had permission slips for land, daily permission slips, and then there was lots of tracts of public land, and there was also days where we're weaving in and out of public and private land that we had permission on. That's where the crazy poaching incident happened, was in Connecticut. Um, and there was we had a bird basically shot out from underneath us,
happens, man.
uh, by someone that was not allowed to be on that land, um, and it was pretty crazy. I actually detail it in the book, talk about it. It was, interesting, and but it really added to kind of that novelty of being in a new place and not knowing really all not necessarily knowing the rules, but just knowing the customs. And, I was by myself when it happened, or I had a photographer with me, and we're both from Texas, and so we're just kinda like, "What do we do here? Like, what is happening?" Like, I know that this guy can't be here, but, this is just it's a very different situation and just another wrinkle in the whole series of ripples of how nuanced this thing is, hunting
Oh, yeah.
turkeys.
Uh, I wanted to go back to you talking about, the retainment part of your experiences, someone come out maybe once and they don't continue on. I think an important point there is they got out there, they got that exposure. So 2 things here. 1, if nothing else, we're adding them to the either the 10% side that approve, that are active in it, or I guess passive in it, or they're definitely the higher end of that 80% we covet is, either staying indifferent or just are okay with our lifestyle and our community, and they don't wanna, stop or put any barriers in the way, for us going out there. They understand and, realize there's a hunters, fishermen play a role, right? The other part of that too that I liked what you said is that first reaction, the that helps bridge the gap between that disassociation of where your food comes from, right? Like going back to the butter ball or just going to the meat market, not having a hand or at least having a upfront truthful concept of what it takes to get any of that meat, whether it's from the marketplace or you're doing it yourself. What goes into that? And it seems kind of cliche to people like you and I because we're in this stuff. We've been so for decades, but it's important and it's very profound to these people that are coming into it for the first time or going through one of your butchery classes.
Definitely, and I think I always say that it kind of tunes you into resource usage in general. Like, it's once you've walked up on a your first dead deer, and it's just like, oh, the impact of that, and then every time you eat a hamburger, maybe even just for a second, you're like, oh, you trace it back. Cow, maybe feedlot, and just do the math. Like, oh, living thing, like all that. I think it's great. It's just such a connecting thing. And, somebody I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, "Yeah, so you're just out hunting all the time." And I was like, "Well, come May, I'm probably out picking berries a lot, because I love that, and it's just another way, I would rather have a jar of homemade dewberry jam in the refrigerator than anything else, any other kind of, I wanna buy it, it's like it's free, it's out here. It's like people will walk out in their driveway and they'll complain about the, fruit tree, dropping out of their car and getting it dirty, and then they drive to the store and they buy fruit, and it's like and I think that, when you take somebody hunting like that, then they start to make those connections like, "Oh, there's stuff out here that I can eat. There's just resources that I can just gather. I can enjoy the actual gathering of it." I love picking berries. I like, gathering pecans. We go on a walk in the neighborhood and there's a plum tree dropping and I just start, gathering 'em up in my shirt. I'm like, "Look at all this free stuff." the people that are brand new to it, it can open the door for that quite significantly, I think, and make it really kind of obvious, what that connection is, and then they start to make really good food decisions, or at least be cognizant of it, and I like that a lot, whether it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna call up a farmer and see if I can buy a side of grass-fed beef from the guy, just 1 county over or something," I think it starts to translate in a lot of really great ways.
I'm very jealous of, the items you just listed off that you're able just to go out and get. And I'm sure you would say the same thing about here,
Yeah,
like, you start talking about different mushrooms or, a
certainly.
good fiddleheads in the spring in the North Woods, people get crazy for fiddleheads, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you one. It's gonna be 90 degrees today, or 92 today. It's been a hot one. So, yeah, we pay it our own way to down here. Yeah, we have, we get some stuff. We got, beautiful redfish and tons of deer and dewberries and stuff, but yeah, you got the morels.
Yeah. Yeah,
So, pretty cool.
everyone's got their thing. When you so I guess we can go on this line of thought here too, is the local foraging. As you were going throughout, and forgive me, I don't have the book in front of me. Were you able to do some of that local foraging and pairing it with, regionally what you were doing and note and highlight the differences there?
Yeah, I felt very strongly that that should be a component of the book because springtime is, to be very general, a great time to be foraging. Probably if I had to pick a season, I'd say that was it, especially in Texas, but also in Texas, I'm the most informed about. Not. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Like I've had time to accrue more knowledge about it, but you put me in Oregon, I'm like, well, what's happening?
Right, right, right.
We were we were a little in front of mushroom season in Oregon. We were definitely in front of berry season. So the foraging wasn't as, we didn't get as much stuff. There was some mushrooms and truffles that we brought in that one of the chefs that was hunting with us, he brought in that from the more coastal regions that were, kind of a little bit ahead of where we were out east. But I wanted to make it a really strong component of that or other like foods that are just common in those areas, like in Connecticut, it was oysters, and so, oyster stuffing with turkey, kind of that holiday style, menu. And so I really wanted to bring that in a lot. And, we also brought in some other, stuff like utilization of turkey. I mean, kind of on these same lines, like how to make a feather pen out of a turkey quill, and just fun things like that. Just really how to get the most out of your season. And this book was very focused on spring. It was about mid-March through mid-May of 1 year. The entire book took place in that little short time frame. And so yeah, there there was a lot of foraging. I think we got berries and cactus paddles and spring onions and ramps, some mushrooms, but and those things just naturally are so nice with turkey. Last year, the year after that we wrote the book, my daughter and I went to Washington and doubled on birds the first morning, which was like her luck so far, which is she has the worst perspective on turkey hunting that you can have. It's just like, yeah, me and my dad go, we sit for an hour and a half, 3 gobblers will come in, I shoot one, and then he shoots one. That's happened to us twice, and I'm just like, "Girl, you've got years of just the worst turkey hunting in front
You
of you.
already
You're
peaked.
good." Yeah. But right after that, she wanted to keep hunting, which to this day warmed my heart. It's just I was like, "That's the best." She's like, "Let's go do that again." I'm like, "Yeah, let's go do that again." We didn't get any more turkeys on that trip, but, an hour later, we stumbled across a morel patch, and, I'm just overjoyed. Like, when I saw that, I cussed. I was like, "I'm so sorry that I just said all that," even if I couldn't help it. I was just like,
Excited.
it was too exciting, and then to, like, have these 2 beautiful birds in the refrigerator and then this big bag of fresh morels, and we were gonna be up in Washington for another week, after that. So I'm like, I didn't even have to like try to figure out how to preserve this stuff. I was like, we're just eating turkey and mushrooms for the
Or just
next week,
yeah,
and maybe some seafood, while we're here. But it was great, and it really speaks to that kind of those corollaries, between foraging and hunting. It's just like you're looking around, you're in tune with your environment, and once you start to learn like, "Oh, hey, I can eat that," whether it's a plum or a wild down here, wild persimmons, things like that. It's really cool then to start to incorporate that in there, and there's just nothing like sitting down to a meal of these things that you found, identified, and then properly prepared. And I think you really can instill that excitement in people. They start to see it, as new, fresh hunters. They get out there, and for the first time, they see that, and they're like, "Whoa, this is really cool. Like I can do so many fun things, and I can share this with my family and friends, and in ways that I never thought that I could, like, um, communicate food with."
it's, and I've talked about this in the past, but it is so there's a sense of ownership there, there's a sense of pride, I think, for most people from the beginning, the first season hunter to, again, someone that's been doing it their whole life, that not only are you providing a great pile of protein in a turkey or venison, what have you. But being able to go out, identify wild forage and harvest that and contribute that to that plate. Or even if you got a backyard garden and like me and my kid, he likes the jalapeno. So I'll go get jalapeno plants in the spring and we'll plant them. And he likes cooked jalapenos with deer backstrap. So we do that and we'll look at the plate and whatever else. If I've got oysters that I went out and raked up in the bay, and we'll pair all that together and you look at the plate and you're like, I did all of that, or we did all of that. And there was nothing hermetically sealed here. There was
Mhm,
nothing foreign. Like this came from us. And that's yeah, it's empowering, man. You like to be able to take a new person out and say, like you said earlier, you can do this. Anyone can do this. It's just put the attention to it. It's
mhm,
without being like super hyperbolic here, it's life changing
mhm,
if you let it.
definitely, yeah. Yeah, and with kids especially, and just, like, they develop that confidence, they can identify foods. I remember once my daughter was, you know, at a restaurant, there's some meetup, there's a bunch of kids, and she starts picking yucca blossoms and feeding all the other kids, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, "Well, it's cool." But every other parent turned around and just looked at me and glared. They're like, "What?" And I'm just like, "It's okay." That five-year-old knows that yucca blossoms are delicious. So and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, it's good to check, I get it, but no, we're cool." You know? And she knows, how to identify all those things, and it I would say that, you know, new hunters and all of the experiences that I've had, with them is wonderful, but it pales to when you get to hunt or spend those times or educate your kid, you know?
Mhm.
I'm definitely to the point where I'm like, "I don't care if I shoot a deer this year, I just want her to shoot a deer." And, starting a couple years ago, she was probably putting the bulk of the proteins in the freezer. And still likes it, and we're at that age where it's like every season, I'd have to do the check-in, like,
Right,
"How do
right.
you feel about it this year?" She's like, "Well, man," it's about she's 14, it's about that's about as positive and energetic of an answer as you'll get, but it's still, I'll be like, "Can I really take you away for 1 weekend from birthday parties and friends and hanging out and all that stuff that you love to do, and take you out in the woods, and we're gonna try to shoot a deer or a pig?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Man, cool. Alright."
That is
That
cool.
yeah, that's great. But, and then that's another version of recruitment, that may be the most valuable. That's recruitment, 40 years in. And I'm so happy about that. And it's just and I see other people hunting with their kids. I just love it. I think it's great. It's really great. Or any kind of food, picking berries or raking oysters. I mean, how cool is that? Like, so much fun. Yeah.
My daughter, similar in age, she's 13, and, the last time she shot and hunted was when she was 5, killed a nice tom. Dad, not ever having trained kids around firearms and understanding, that whole process, only having worked with adults in my military career, stuff like that, I kinda ruined her with the report of the gun, and she wasn't really prepared for that, and I didn't start her off small, so for a number of years, it wasn't the hunting that bothered her, it was the gun, it was the bang. And then finally going through and watching her younger brother go out with me and having a lot of success, she came back to me this year just like yours, I always do the check-in, but know ultimately what it's gonna be. And this year she proactively came and said, "Hey, I'd like to go hunting this fall. Can we go turkey hunting?" Hell yes.
Yeah.
So we went out. I mean, we tried like hell. One night we saw 80 some odd birds, just couldn't make it happen. But it was just great to see her put the camo
Uh-huh.
on. This little miss who's all worried about all the crap they put on their face, the girls right now, and the white elephants and whatever the hell else
Oh, man.
TikTok's telling 'em to do. They're the same. And to get out there and put that mossy oak or whatever the hell she had on and get out there with me, I was like, solid, man, solid. There's a step in the right direction. I appreciate exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I mean, I think something just resonated early on about it. Maybe, it could have been adrenaline, because I've seen her, like, shake afterwards, and, and get it. And I think that those she compiles those memories of how it felt. And she gets for all about all the discomfort, sitting under the tree, the cold, the getting up early,
Mhm.
all that stuff's just out the window, and in her memory. And so I just take it a year at a time, and I imagine that there might be a break at some point. There might be like a few years where it's just like, but it hasn't happened yet, and I got lucky, um, with having great places to hunt too, and to be able to take her where, we have, high, opportunity rates, and she shot her first pig when she was, I believe 7.
Mm,
And
cool.
it was just like, I mean, for me, I was like, "Whoa, that was a good shot." Really cool, and she eats it too, And to her credit, I think, she doesn't really like fish that much, which in a way breaks my heart, but then the cool part about that is that she doesn't like to go fishing, you know? And I mean that, and that I mean, I sure would love to go fishing with her, but also, respect the hell out of the fact that she's like, I'm not gonna eat it."
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not gonna do it, and I'm like, "Well, alright, I'm gonna go fishing because I
Yep.
wanna eat it," It's like, and so I was like, it's frustrated me so much, but then I was like, "Wait a minute, why am I frustrated by this, like, core, uh, ethic," you know, that she's very much presenting, and it's like, maybe one day she'll like fish, and then she'll wanna go fishing, but as it
Mhm.
stands, she's just like, "Yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that because of that." I'm like,
Well, I
"That's
mean,
illogical."
that's noble and admirable, but I think
Yeah.
also as a dad, you're like, selfishly, "I wanna hang out with you, like, you like this
Yeah.
thing, like, come on out here with me," but there yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it can be easier too, fishing, and I fish a lot,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
so but it's fine, it's fine, maybe one day, we have a big trip, a big turkey hunting trip planned for next spring that I just
Awesome.
counting the days, going to Nebraska.
Oof, nice.
Never hunted Nebraska before, we're gonna be hunting with Jordan Budd, who, we've watched on Meat Eater together over and over and over, and just, like, terribly excited about the entire proposition of just getting to spend time with just her, hunting turkeys in a new place, and hunting with, someone that she views as a bit of a hero too. So, and it's
That's
just like
cool.
it's real cool. And, yeah, I think, to speak to that recruitment, it's like make an adventure, make it travel, make it cultural, make it personal, all these things that you can do to incorporate all this other stuff beyond it, um, that, I always try to think of how she's going to view it, 20 years from now, how she's going to think about that trip, and so, it's fun, man. I love it.
Like you, I was late to the game with hunting, started, about the same time. I feel like we're running some pretty interesting parallels here, you and I. I've been having a fishing pole in my hand since I was 3 years old, but it wasn't until I was in my early 20s while I was in the military that I said, "I'm gonna make this happen." Wanted to do it my whole life and anyway, got old enough to have the resources and find it on my own. But I wonder, like, guys like you and me that do come to it late, knowing that you probably wanted it our ability to have that hindsight, like, "I really wish I could have done this or had this experience," being able to do that now with our kids, like, I hope we're setting them up, and I think you're right, like, having these core memories and then the value system that lends itself to and how they develop as, contributing members of society and human beings, like, I like to think that that's a pretty solid foundation to give them.
Definitely. Yeah, the confidence, the ability to act under pressure, which I think is time and time again the thing that is what I'm most impressed with. When she shot her first turkey, it was classic situation. We've got a field, there's 7 birds roosted there. This is gonna be a layup. If anybody's ever turkey hunted, you know that when I start telling the story that way, how it's gonna go. Nope. They all just went somewhere else. I was like, I don't even know where they went. There's a big open field in front of us. Like, where could they have gone? I mean, they flew off into the woods, I guess. And so it's like, I thought this was gonna be different. And then 1 circles way or actually 3 circle way around us, and not only did they come in and do their thing, but they behaved like turkeys in every way. There was kind of a scuffle between these toms and a jake. They got separated from their hens, and the jake got on the wrong side of the fence, poor guy. Like, he was on the side with the hens, and those toms were like, "Wait a minute." And they
Mhm.
went and they just beat the tar out of him, and she's watching the whole thing. That's at about 150 yards. We're barely, um, we're hidden just by a little bit of camo, netting, but the whole time, I'm trying to, like, realize what she's going through because my heart is just, like, beating out of my chest. I'm like, "Just be cool, man. This is." And then
Mhm.
they see we have a Jake decoy, and I guess they're in a Jake beaten mood at this point. And so you could just see it. They turn and they see that Jake, and it was just on at that point, and they just slow strutted 3 of them through this open field right to us. And the whole time I'm like, I don't know if she's gonna be able to, not just not move. There's gonna be a moment where and they're gonna come up, they're gonna be in 5 yards, and we're not gonna have a shot. All these things could go wrong, and she handled herself perfectly, and all I could do was just, like, whisper to her is just like, "Take the shot when you got it," and she did it, you know, and, and it was a perfect shot, and things like that, and it's you step back and you think like, "That's amazing that that person did that," the person that, was, looking at her phone yesterday afternoon or, just, doing kid stuff, and then you put them in that situation and they're able to kind of pull it out and just, like and nail it and do such a good job under pressure where I'm still struggling with it, and I sit with adults all the time that
You would
struggle with it or would have made a mistake, and she's great under pressure, and she's able to, like, keep her head around her, and it goes back to, all these other things, these lessons that we're able to learn about, resources and food and community and things like that, but also, like, how you're gonna handle yourself in a stressful situation, or something that's where it's like, "Oh, I need to, like, be calm and focused right now, and if I do that, then the outcome's gonna be great," So, it's enjoyable.
I love that after feeling. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think most parents would is that you're not, like, astounded by it, that you didn't have faith in them that they could or could not do it, but, like, when they do it, and they're just very matter of fact, and you're like, "Huh, okay, cool." Like, we take on all the stress and the anxiety, I think, because we want them to be successful and we want
Ooh,
everything to go safe, and we are aware of all the things that could go wrong based on years of experience. And as long as you don't, impart that on them and just let them do their thing, it's quite natural, and oftentimes they surprise us in the best way, and yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, definitely.
Uh, and, respect for your time. Man, I can't believe we've already been at this for an hour. We do wanna talk about the Thanksgiving table, so I'm gonna transition here,
Sure.
even though I love this line of thought here, but so there's a whole way we could take this. I wanna ask you, do you have a plan for your Thanksgiving? Are you doing a bird? And if so, what's your preparation for? What have you settled on for Thanksgiving 2024?
Yeah, so, it will be contingent on turkey will be part of it. Um, Sometimes I'll do some fish, A lot of times I try to do I try to go pretty traditional. I like having turkey and a ham. A ham is gonna be, ironically, the hard part for me this year is, like, I gotta go get a pig. I gotta go get the right pig too, it's gotta be, a certain size, certain fat content. But, I've taken to doing turkey breasts, and I'll typically try to set one aside if it can last that long. It's high dollar stuff there in the freezer is that turkey breast. I really like it a lot. Um, and so, one breast, and last year I somebody asked me in the class the other day about sous vide, and I was just like, it's like it was kind of a craze. And for anybody that doesn't know what it is, it's, you vac seal something typically with some seasoning, and then you cook it at a very controlled temperature in a water bath with this an immersion circulator. It's kind of this nerdy way of cooking. It became very popular a few years back.
Yeah.
I'm a very traditional cooker. I like to, start fires and put stuff on top of it and, with salt on it, but there are some really great uses for it, and as far as I've discovered, I think the best use, for sous vide as far as it comes, with wild game would be a turkey breast. It enables you to cook it with such precision. 3 hours at 140, 145, and it just comes out perfect from wall to wall, and you can put whatever kinda seasoning in there you want, and that, for me, has become a really great addition, for Thanksgiving, is I can cook it like that and then put, like, a light sear on the outside or just serve it basically poached, which is kinda my preference. You get a very, very um, pure kind of expression of turkey that way, and then I'll just take turkey stock and, make a sauce or gravy out of that. A brown gravy, confusingly. Um, so that'll definitely be on there, and, and all those other flavors, sage, bread, maybe rosemary and onions and mushrooms and stuff like that. Those things that kind of go with it, celery, those other flavors that really kind of speak to Thanksgiving, which is fun. Thanksgiving is by far my favorite holiday. I adore it because it gives me an excuse to just put out, this lavish spread, cook all day. I just absolutely love it. You're done in 20 minutes, and I'm just like, I cannot believe you spent 48 hours on this, but, it's fun. It's what I do, and, but definitely, I love to incorporate turkey into Thanksgiving. Sometimes, maybe this year I always say that one year I'm gonna make a mole, so I'm gonna do, like, a really traditional Mexican version of a turkey recipe, which would be, like, conceivably one of the oldest North American turkey recipes would be a mole, like these crazy intricate sauces that have different dried chilies and burnt sesame seeds and chocolate and raisins and almonds and all this stuff. If you've ever had like a really like incredible nuanced homemade mole. And I think of that as being like a really good potential Thanksgiving dish too. But all told, I'm probably gonna just stick with the tradition this year and do, mashed potatoes and gravy and probably hopefully, fingers crossed, a ham, and a roasted turkey breast, um, and, all the traditional sides and, maybe chop up some, giblets and put it in the gravy, things like that. So, yeah, I think there's really good ways to incorporate those, like, very traditional flavors into, wild game and, everybody that comes over, they don't feel, like, challenged at all, it's just like, "Oh, yeah, I know this." I'm like, "Yes, there's a wild bird. Let me tell you the story about what I shot." Just a perfect excuse, to do all that, or more likely, "Let me tell you the story about when she shot this." You know? Pretty cool. Um, but yeah, I think so. I recently did a recipe also for, a winery out in California. They they craft their wines to be, very wild game friendly. The owner is a big hunter. Really cool. It's called Pasalacqua, and they make just brilliant wines, and they're very, very good with game, and so they asked me to contribute a recipe, and they're an Italian family too. There's a huge Italian, tradition in Northern California, especially like San Francisco, Napa. Um, and so I kind of came up with a Italian version of a traditional American Thanksgiving because they obviously don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Italy, and kind of very similar flavors of sage and rosemary and bread, in a stuffing, but just stuffed that into a butterfly breast, celery, but I added, pine nuts and raisins, which is a really Italian, composition for a recipe, like, they love those, the nuts and the sweetness, and added that in there and then rolled that up and roasted it, and that came out really cool, it still felt like a Thanksgiving recipe, but just, a little bit different, and it paired really well with the wine too, so that was good. Mhm. Yeah, so turkey's really fun because you can as far as wine goes, you can go all over the place with it. White wines work really well, red wines work really well. I mean, I think in a holiday setting, people often will lean towards red wine. Um, I think, probably if I had to name one, it'd be a Pinot Noir. It has just that, jamminess, earthiness. It's a lighter wine, um, and it will match with that lighter protein of turkey, and that could be the leg meat or the breast meat. Here in Texas, we produce a lot of Mourvèdre, which is a excellent wine with turkey. And then even some white wines, do really well. Chenin Blanc, Picpoul, uh, can be great with like even stewed things. We'll do a lot of like tomato based stews with turkey legs, things like that. And those work really well. Beer, um, absolutely, and if you're a beer drinker, it can go all over the place. But really for me, it's like, and this is kind of, uh, a common thread in this conversation. It's just like, it's mostly about enjoyment and overthinking, and I just tossed out all these French words and people are like, "Oh god, stop. Stop with it, dude." And I'm like, "You know what? Doesn't really matter that much. Just like if you wanna drink some sweet tea with your turkey, please do,
Yeah, yeah,
It's just like, I'm really to the point in life where I just want people to be happy, you know, and enjoy what you're doing. Don't overthink it. If you are not noticing the interplay that your wine has, with your meal, then I hope it's because the conversation's so good, like, and you're
yeah.
enjoying yourself that much. So I really, I can give some basic pointers, but really just like go and, pick something out that's cool. Pick something out from your region or pick something out from the region where you got the turkey. I think that's really fun for me. Like when I travel, I'm just like any roadside stand, I'm pulling over. If I see a winery, I'll grab a bottle from there. If I'm in Washington, I'm gonna eat some cod and drink some of their wine and eat some of their asparagus. And likewise, in Georgia, I'm gonna eat, the second best peaches in the country. Um, yeah, you hear that, Georgia? Um, yeah, I think, it's just again, it's all about enjoyment.
Sure. I asked the question because I bring myself back to my own personal experience with sushi. For years, I looked at sushi and I was like, "There's just no way." I'm overwhelmed just by looking at it, all the different stuff. That's it's got to be gross. And then, golly days, probably a decade or so over now, I finally was out with some friends, had some sushi, and I was blown away. I was like, "What have I been missing?" All these different flavors were kicking off. So I guess for me, like, if it doesn't seem obvious, is there something that works together? Because my palate completely opened up, and then I started understanding what basic sushi was compared to what really good sushi was, and I still think I don't have the pocketbook to experience really great sushi, but I'm happy where I'm at. So same thing here, like trying to learn and understand the pairings and things like that. I'm a stout guy, so a dark beer is going to go with every single thing, no matter what time of the year.
Perfect.
IPAs be damned. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's your answer. Stout. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
Exactly. Alright, the pigs real quick. So you mentioned that it's gotta be, the right fat consistency, the right size. How are you judging that on the hoof?
I'm not. Yeah, so it's, I did a class on Monday and I was, we were talking about this and somebody's like, "Well, an optimal pig?" And I'm like, No, no, no. See, it's the one in front of you,
Mm,
and then you deal with that." So
okay.
the whole basis of the hog book was that, after years and years of all these questions, the primary question being, "What's your favorite recipe for feral hog?" And I cannot answer that. Is this a 7-pound piglet or is it a 350-pound boar? There's no way that I'm gonna apply the same recipe to both those animals and have the same outcome. There's no way that you're gonna do that, and then if you do that, then you're probably gonna have a bad outcome, and then you're gonna blame it on the pig. Therefore, uh, all of those, recipes and the entire approach for the book is based around what you have, not what you want. So there's, like, these I put it into 4 categories, being a small pig, a medium-sized pig, a large sow, and a large boar. And generally, everything's gonna fit into one of those categories, and then you have a butchery program and a bank of recipes that follow that. So, if I want a ham, if I'm lucky enough to have a sounder of pig sitting in front of me, and then I'll be like, "Remember the ham, dude. You need a ham." I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, don't go for the big one," you know? Then I would probably, try to pick out a nice football-shaped, pig in the 80-pound range, if I was lucky enough to be able to do that. But yeah, you're gonna need some fat. If it's too lean, it's just not gonna come out great, and that pig is gonna be better off served for, slow cooking and shredding or sausage or something like that. So, I really try, especially with pigs, I really try to get people to kind of think about pigs as just individuals. You could shoot two different pigs that could be siblings out of the same sounder, and they could be drastically different. One could be really lean, one could have a lot of fat. It's because they're just anarchists. They just do whatever they want. They don't care. Like if one of them's just better at finding acorns than the other, they're not gonna be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, come over here, I'm gonna share." They're not, they don't care. And so, yeah, it's really about deciphering what that animal that you've got on the ground in front of you is gonna be best at, how you're gonna serve it. So that's how we approach it. Um, for me personally, I've got a bunch of hog hunts coming up in the next I probably have about 4 or 5 days of hunts coming up. I've got a spot where they're just loaded in there. I've got them on camera every single night, just where they're crossing through. There's no food or anything there to draw them to this area, but they're just there, and they look good. We've had a good acorn drop. So, I'm very hopeful that, I'm gonna get that ham pig, or hopefully
Awesome.
a couple, because we need sausage, we need chorizo, we need all kinds of things. We're out, and I love that about, when that freezer starts to get empty, and you're like,
Mm.
"Oh, I need to get to work," I've
Yep,
got
yep.
still got turkey, but don't get confident because turkey season for me doesn't start till mid-March, and so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I still have to ration the turkey
Mhm.
before I start thinking about that stuff. But hogs, yeah, hogs are on my mind right now. Like I said, it'll start to cool off here conceivably in the next few weeks. It's still pretty warm. I don't like to hunt them that much when it's super hot outside. Plus, they don't come out except they come out at 3 a.m. So yeah, but hogs, they'll be on the menu. Hopefully for Thanksgiving in one way or another. Maybe we'll do a fun sausage, or maybe we'll have a pate or something before dinner. But a ham would be optimal.
That's pretty awesome. Uh, all of these recipes and more information can be found at thewildbooks.com. And timely with Christmas season upon us, great stocking stuffers, good presents for the aspiring chef in your life, the outdoorsman or woman. Go there, check out all the swag, the books, all the cool calls, and yeah, start filling up those stockings in the Christmas tree or the Hanukkah gifts, whatever you got going on. Jesse, where else can the folks find you if they want to interact with you, follow along your adventures, and learn more about what you do and what you offer?
Yeah, the restaurant is here in Austin. It's Dai Due. It's on the east side in Austin. You can follow me on Instagram, Sac-A-Lait, S-A-C dot A dot L-A-I-T. That took me a second. Uh, yeah, and then, thewildbooks.com. Yeah, we have both of those, newer books on there, the turkey book and the hog book available in all kinds of cool merch, hats, calls, slings, things like that, and, yeah, you track me down that way.
Awesome. Um, we're kinda up against it. Any final thoughts or anything else you wanna share before we, put a bow on it?
No, it was a great conversation with you. I really appreciate it. I've been a fan from afar. I just see your stuff, and I'm just like, man, I would just love to have a conversation with you, recorded or not. And so I'm very flattered that you reached out, and it was very enjoyable.
Oh,
I
pleasure's all
I
on
really
this side of the screen, my friend.
I
It
appreciate it.
go cuts both ways. At some point, we're gonna have to get a Northern New England turkey tour on your calendar, at least one of these states, and
Yeah,
we can go rake up some Great Bay, New Hampshire oysters at the same time.
I am
Uh,
all in.
yeah, that'll be a hell of a time. All
Yeah.
right, there he is, folks. Jesse Griffiths. Thanks for so much for sitting down with us. I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. Same to you, and shoot me a text of what that ham looks like when you're able to plate it. That would be pretty awesome.
All right, I will. Thank you so much, Fred.
Thank you, sir. The show continues here. Our special Sportsman's Voice Thanksgiving edition. We're joined now by Chef Josh, friend of the CSF, wild game chef, teacher, culinary writer for Wild Sheep magazine. Just got out of the field with a ladies hunt course. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, brother. I'm fantastic. So excited to be on here with you. And yeah, we just got out of a course with FTW, which is one of our ranch partners, and we had 12 women from the U.S. and Canada come all over through our partnership with Women Hunt, and a phenomenal experience. So much was taken from that week. So yeah, I'm still glowing from the experience.
Our last time you and I talked, that was evident, and it's just awesome to hear that that continues. The timing maybe is apropos here for our conversation. A dozen women got to come out of the field. Some of them probably with treasures. Maybe some will adorn their Thanksgiving tables. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. So that's one thing we try to tackle is, especially with me, being alongside the amazing staff with Wild Sheep Foundation and Women Hunt, is to really be that culinary avenue for them and answer all the questions. We even have a WhatsApp chat that we all get a chance to kind of spend time together and really center the conversation around how to bring that harvest to the table. And with the holidays right around the corner, and no better time than now to start that conversation and see how you can feed your family, because it really does. It adds an extra side of pride of your meal that you're offering your family instead of just the conventional, American spread that you typically see on a holiday table.
So let's dive into that. So we've kind of already on the program for this show talked about the bird in and of itself. There's so much more to offer on the Thanksgiving table, and that's where I wanted to pull you in because I so enjoyed getting to know you last year at our NAS summit in Dewey Beach, and just watching you interact with the guests and different, just all the different stuff you brought to the table. Literally, what are some of the things people may not think about, and maybe in like, if you go to the first ever Thanksgiving, wild edibles that were probably there that we've just gotten away from?
Right. That's a great question. So I lean a lot of my instruction and my teaching on the nutritional anthropology of not only our nation, but people in general, us as a species. And there is a lot that is lost. And I think I remember you and I talking back in Delaware about this. And what it kind of leans on is that the fact that what was on the original table of maybe the first Thanksgiving was not at all what we eat on our tables now. And mostly because of agriculture and all the other things, we've lost a lot of that. So introducing some of those ingredients back in a way that can kind of pay homage to that first dinner would be a lot of things like offering, lots of sweet potatoes, lots of tubers, things like that, and wild game especially, because now what we consider wild game wasn't wild game back then. It was just sustenance. It was protein. It was what we needed to survive.
You're in Texas.
Yep.
If you're gonna go afield and adorn your Thanksgiving table with such, edibles, it's not gonna be the same as me in New Hampshire. We're gonna have and we did talk about
Absolutely.
this, the different, regions of the country and what is available. So, give me a Texas, traditional I mean, I guess traditional Texas spread of what's available to you.
Yeah, so we obviously just came out of dove season. Having some doves in the freezer and treating them very similar to Cornish game hens. Doing, because of how much protein they offer, there are opportunities to treat them more as appetizers, right? I I teach a lot of wild game cooking to try to get away from the standard fare that you might see in Texas. Obviously, 12 months out of the year, you would definitely see chili or you'd see jerky being used for wild game preparation. And we teach
When
outside of those confines, right? We much rather have a conversation about how to implement your wild game in regional cuisines from Indian to Thai to North African to whatever. And it doesn't stop there. It can also go towards your holiday meals as well. So if you're asking me what is going to be on the dinner table at our home on Thanksgiving and wild game especially, we hunt a lot of axis. We hunt a lot of nilgai. We are doing the larger roast, so we can even do a crown roast off of the backstrap and treat it just like you've seen like a crown roast of lamb, and being done in the exact same fashion. But obviously, with what they eat and their terroir and where they come from, fat needs to be implemented in different ways, and there's very easy ways of doing that. So and then with our heritage of being German, Southern German, Bavarian, more importantly, we tie in those flavors as well. So I think that, when you look across our table, this Norman Rockwell kind of imagery of the food and the platters and everybody smiling and having a good time, ours looks a little different because there's more implementation of wild game along those lines. So we're using everything that we got from the last couple of months. So that way it doesn't stay deep, deep within that chest freezer too long.
Texas is intriguing because of the variety. There's so many different, I guess, invasives, right? You get non-native species there galore that
Oh,
you have
absolutely.
available to you. I think that that opportunity and the variety opens itself and lends itself to, like you just said, with the dozen ladies you were out in the field with, is that empowerment, and it's maybe they had a bad experience with whitetail when they were a kid because someone didn't handle it, or, they're like, "Oh, that tastes gamey. I'm not interested in that." But, there's other critters to choose from or other local harvested vegetables or the tubers, like you said, that can really be the gate opening the gate for them into our community and what we do. And again, harkening back to our conversation in the past, it's really empowering, being able to source that stuff, provide it, and then, feed friends and family with it and look at it, sit back and be like, I could have gone to Kroger, filling your favorite grocery store, and got
Sure.
a butterball, or I did
Yeah.
this, and look at what this is
Yeah. It
doing.
was it was something that I always get a chance to spend time with our women hunt graduates or our women hunt participants during the activation portion of our hunt, and I ask them the question like, "What is it? Why are you here? Like, what is your purpose? What is your why?" Every single one of them say that they want to find that connection between their food and feeding their families. And you get that, you really do, like you were talking about, you get that pride moment of being able to step back and look at the table and look at what you produced. That's only the end result. There is joy in the process of cooking and having your children next to you and working through the hard stuff. That's something that we really do focus on at Gastronomy Outdoors and with Wild Sheep and Women Hunt, is focusing on the fact that this is beyond just a lifestyle. This is your way of making your mark with your family and doing the most important thing you can do as somebody who loves and protects your family is provide for them and feed them. And sitting around the dinner table and enjoying that time together is so much better spent when you actually source that protein yourself. And beyond that, just with vegetables as well.
Absolutely. It's, in the in a time here post-election and even before where, you know, eh, and this isn't to highlight one side or the other, but health and the quality of our food really has been put center stage, again, pre and post election. And there's a whole, new mainstream, not like, yeah, nah, that new, because you've had fringes that have talked about this stuff for years, guys like you and me that had concerned over GMOs and all these chemicals and things that are introduced to our food and food supply. Um, so what a neat time to be having this conversation and priming that conversation with here's how you can do it. Now, I say that to also mind the listener that as fun as this is, you gotta do some planning here. You're not just gonna go out right before November, whatever, the 28th, I guess, this year, and, in a couple days, source all your stuff. There is some growing seasons and consideration that needs to go into the thought process here.
Oh, absolutely. That's one thing that I always try to bring home when I'm having those conversations, right? Is let's look at our food system. Let's look at the major problems that we've allowed because every time we introduce convenience into our life, I mean, it's something that's been repeated all the time. Every time we invite convenience, we lose a life skill, right? Because we no longer have that opportunity. We no longer have that, dare I say it, what some people would call chore. And we have lost that and we've outsourced every bit of that to corporations that will easily make things much more uh, easier on our pocketbook, right? We think at the, in the front half, but also easier on our time. And we spend all this time trying to reconcile where our day went. When if we really were to take stock of it, we could be like, well, if I allocated this much time to cooking, it's my firm belief that what will happen is more people will allocate that time, then allocate towards higher quality ingredients, hunting or otherwise. And then that will reflect in the market because, with how our market is set up, no one's going to produce meals that are made of junk that people are no longer eating as much. What they are going to do is make it easier for those people to get those meals to their tables. And that's my kind of utopia way of looking at our food system and how to fix it is with the consumer base making that dollar go farther with what they want. But like you said, it has to be done in a way that's paired with making mistakes. Things are more difficult. How do we get around, burning everything that we cooked because we don't know how to cook? All of these are tough questions, but I think that they are important questions to ask because it doesn't lead to somewhere good by just allowing fat, sugar, and sodium to just be pumped into our veins every time we put a dollar down on the barrel. That's where we get. And I do agree there is a huge movement, and I applaud it of people who are finally waking up and looking at their labels and rightfully getting angry. And I mean that in the best way possible is they are looking at it saying, this is no longer I see firsthand. I'm not looking at another country. I'm looking at my family and I'm seeing the difficulty that we are having eating clean. And then you have to ask why is that? And why are other people not interested in this? And I don't know, those are big questions. But yeah, I know because I know you and I know your heart. I know that you are just as excited about this as I am.
Yep, I'm with you. I think I think we have this tendency for things that are chronic and, in this case, like an illness or an ailment, whatever, that if it's not acute, if it's not happening in the here and now, it's not an emergency.
Mhm.
So if your poor diet is contributing into diabetes or morbid obesity, which has contributed to congenital heart failure. Start filling in the blanks because it's a long marathon sickness. People are like, it's just getting old. Maybe not. Maybe your older days could be far more of a higher quality if the fuel you're putting in your motor is better, right? If you're putting trash gas in a Lamborghini,
Yeah,
that Lamborghini is going to chug along until it craps out. But if you take care of it, that Lamborghini is going to be a Lamborghini for a while, right?
exactly. And I mean, you're unbelievably right. And I think that everybody they understand this. This isn't something that is lost on the majority of the public. What it is that I think there are outliers of people who really don't understand it, but it is something of letting go of the things that make you feel good. And like I said before, fat, sugar, and sodium, they make you feel good, right? They have endorphins that go off in your brain and you have these fireworks, and why not get that at the cheapest way possible? But when you look at pulling yourself out of that hole, that's not comfortable at all. And it's not even going to the gym every day, but staying busy and staying active and not being stagnant. And all of these things are beyond a lifestyle push. What they really are is the way that we were supposed to be as humans. We were never supposed to just ingest fat and sugar the way that we do. We're never supposed to just sit here and stare at a screen. And then at the end of the day, say, where'd all my time go? Well, let's look at how much time you spent looking at your phone and not, doing the difficult things. So, yeah, I for one, again, I'll say it one more time. I applaud the direction that I feel this is going. I hope that it goes to where it needs to be. And it's going to take an awakening for the US consumer to look at it in the light of I'm doing this for myself and my family, and that's the benefits are, astronomical, astronomical.
The rigors of folks coming into our community and being motivated and exciting about all of this, participating in the whole um, A to Z part of harvesting wild game, especially when it comes to breaking an animal down, is like that's intimidating. That could be a barrier for people to not get like try to get over and have a hard time. We have a situation in our country, and I think for the first time in a long time, we are at a shortage of processors,
Uh-huh.
of people that can butcher deer. That if you're a first time hunter, you just don't have that mentor to help you. You want to participate, but you need someone to butcher it up. I don't know how you solve this problem. I know that's something we look at, but you know, what are you saying to the folks that are going through your classes and they're only seeing it for the first time maybe with you, but to continue that on and where they if they don't have, a local butcher, they can bring their game to, what's is there a solve for that?
There is, and I approach this in a way of introducing science and dare I say humor to I don't take myself serious. I take the content very seriously. And that adds an extra layer of enjoyment when we're actually on the site, be it, at FTW or if I'm, on an elk hunt in Montana or I'm at a local ranch here and somebody's hired me to come in and help them walk through processing. What it is introducing the science behind it and showing application. I want there to be a short line between what they're doing and how they're gonna apply it. And what I mean by that is saying, okay, different muscle structures on this animal facilitate different cooking practices and can then facilitate different meals. So this is great for the crock pot. This is great for the grill. This needs to be larded. This needs to be barded. How do we implement fat in all of this and really kind of break it down so it's easily digestible, pun intended, of how you can enjoy these different sections, but it's all about application. So I'm sitting here going, this could be ground and used for all of these things. And so I'm conjuring up these ideas of meals because there is a part of every home cook that enjoys the idea of being able to create something. And We all kinda have that. I don't own it. I don't have TikTok, but there are a lot of people that are like, "Man, I can't wait to create something that I can take a picture of or something I can wow my family with." I get that, and there's really no real problem with that as long as it's a healthy catalyst for you to do the right thing. But we focus very much on them being in that space and working through it and seeing, hey, this is how this muscle tears. This is how to take the silver skin off. Can we use this for grind? Does this go in a crock pot? Is this best for a pressure cooker? How can we utilize every bit of the animal that we possibly can? And, as a North American hunter and a wild game chef, I sit there and say, okay, this is better, cooked this way, and this is better cooked that way, but we have so many of our South African guides at the ranch, and these guys, if you've ever been to FTW Ranch, these guys are like, "You eat everything." Like, you eat every single thing, and they're not wrong. And so that's where we are able to have that conversation around this animal that is a renewable resource to us and cherish its life at the same exact time, working through how do you utilize each muscle group to the best of its ability and, enjoy it, right? Hopefully that answers your question.
No, no, it's great. All right, let's, so crock pot, that's at least in my house at Thanksgiving, that's a staple.
Yeah.
What I use from my whitetail, now I know the answer, but I wanna answer for the folks, or at least I think I know the answer, it works for me. What can I use out of that whitetail, typical whitetail this time of year, put it in the crock pot, and serve that as a fine delicacy, an extra bonus delicacy for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, so you got so much on the hind quarter, those different segments of the hind quarter that you can just seam butcher and take a knife to, and it will separate just as easily as you can imagine. Those can be trussed. Trussing is really wrapping the muscle segments and butcher's twine so that the entire muscle area, the entire the entire circumference of the muscle is the same size, so you don't have one piece in the middle that's a little bit thicker and the ends are a little bit thinner. Searing it and putting it with a really good beer or white wine or red wine, whatever you want, in a crock pot with aromatics, which is celery, carrots, onions, stuff like that. So doing what we call a braise, which would just be that good sear on the top of, or the sear all over that muscle group, and then long and low within that crock pot, does a lot to break down that collagen, and that collagen ends up being a part of that poaching liquid. And this is where we get that beautiful texture and taste that we get from ribs and brisket and all of those very high connective tissue, uh, fat, little
Right.
bit fattier, but more ligamentation heavy cuts of meat, right? That you don't get from the backstrap because, everybody listening to this would never put a backstrap in a crock pot because that would be horrible. Like, that should be illegal in, all 50 states. So, but yeah, to answer your question, that right there is a way of, introducing even like a really good braise. Another thing that we teach is using the asabuco. So cutting the shanks of the animal into like 2-inch cuts. This is very familiar with hunters all over, but using that, and more importantly, what we do, I'm going to start mine with the holidays around the corner, is roasting all of my bones from a previous hunt and using that to make a really good stock, and using that stock across all of my holiday meals. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then if we do something for Thanksgiving, we're going to implement that as well. So all of that is really just to add that really high body, high flavor stock. And we might even, there is a big difference between stocks and broths. Broths are typically bone with protein, and stock is just bone. And we will use both of those and use them accordingly depending on if we're making a soup, a sauce, or we're just going to add it to a braising liquid.
I'm curious, this I don't know the answer to, and I don't know why I've not thought about it until now. The marrow, I think, because 'cause we're talking about bones, the marrow in a whitetail, I guess any wild game, uh, good flavor on that? Do you get into that at all?
Yeah, so you're gonna so a lot of your the gaminess that you're going to get from all of your wild animals obviously comes from what they eat. With that being said, on the animal, the gaminess is going to show itself in the bones, the ligaments, and the fat. The bone marrow is going to have a good amount of that gaminess and that gamey quality. That is something that, is pretty hard to avoid, especially when you're in the process of doing a braise such as that, or you're in the process of long and low cooking, and that is just gonna kinda permeate. The best thing to do is really kinda consolidate it and use that sparingly. I know some people who will use a little bit of beef stock with that. They'll pair it, and, I, for one, I don't mind the gaminess, so but the flavor is great. It really is there to act as like, it intensifies body, but it also adds a lot of your texture, because body and texture are really kind of two different things. But it'll add that viscosity to your sauces and everything. So it's a great option.
Let's round it out. We talked about a lot of big game and stuff that can be super intimidating. Let's take it a
Yeah.
little smaller, and let's talk about game birds. Not turkey because we've already been there, done that. But you know, I think everyone's got ducks. Not everyone's got rough grouse or partridge or whatever else is out there. But ducks seems to be spread across the landscape. So if you're gonna go out and whack a limit of mallards or something good tasting, um, how would you put that to work on your Thanksgiving table this year?
I Great question. I, for one, really do enjoy a whole roasted duck, and you don't get that crispy skin. If you think of Peking duck automatically when you have a whole duck, and the fat that is there, even on a wild duck, is still something that should be treasured and taken good care of, right? So, what I would do is still roast the entire duck. There's many different ways. So there's one way of drying the skin and kinda even almost packing it in like a mix of kosher salt and egg whites, and you would encase the entire thing and just let it sit in the refrigerator. Through osmosis, that is going to take all the moisture out of the skin, which is going to produce a very, very juicy skin. You just have to remember that on the latter half of the recipe that you add that much salt, right? Another thing that you can do, which I absolutely love, and this is more on the technical side, is much more of a duck roulade. And this is taking all of the bones out of the entire animal and leaving just the skin and the protein, and then simply just stuffing it and rolling it. This is a very old, I mean, even I saw Jesse Griffiths a few months back at a TWA conference, and he was talking about doing wild turkey because he just released his turkey book, and that was something that I personally was excited to talk to him about. Love that guy, and so we even talked about doing roulades, and having that kind of stuff together is a really good option just to feed a big family.
Man, I told you. I know. Even if you ate, you're hungry now. You're like, whew. Let's get to next Thursday. Um, as this podcast drops in 2024, next Thursday is the day Thanksgiving. Uh, just some just some really cool ideas and thoughts and conversations and philosophies and just two outstanding guys. And to you, the audience, thank you for hanging through some of the technical difficulties. Um, I know at the beginning, and Jesse, we had a couple, and then uh, poor Josh and I. It must be something with Texas. Both of them are in Texas. I've never experienced so many gremlins, but alas, we got through it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm so happy to be able to bring both of those guys to you, and their talents, their knowledge. Um, I hope some of this removes some of the intimidation around wild game, around foraging, and incorporating the most healthy available food out there to your Thanksgiving or even beyond, right? making this part of your diet and all that. So, um, thanks again to both of them for making themselves available, and again, really enjoyed the conversations. That's the show. Not a lot of housekeeping to go. We got some great episodes upcoming. We got a NASC recap as we put all the NASC sessions together. I'm really excited for you guys to hear um, what was a great week. And these sessions will serve as a great resource going forward, especially going into the next sessions wherever you live. Um, that's what we're doing down here, putting our minds together, talking about trends and things we're seeing across the country, problem solving, and protecting what we all enjoy, what we love, and what is part of our lives, and ultimately the work that we do. And as we participate in conservation as anglers, hunters, trappers, and our rec shooting, and what the contributions are there to the greater good, to everybody, to all your neighbors. It's pretty good stuff. So, uh, happy Thanksgiving. We're getting into the holiday season, so another fun episode upcoming. A little gear list, if you will, to look at for the sports men and women in your life. But thanks for tuning in. As always, bringing us along, supporting the program, sharing it far and wide. Um, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. As always, CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation. We will see you all next week for the roundup. Thanks. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.